my name's John Cordy and today at 6 PM we're premiering the John Cordy retrospective, a sideways glance at my career. So this just arrived today. Possibly you might have seen my reviews and playing on the S7, which is like the super strap variant of the Larry Carlton guitars from Sire. I was so impressed with that I thought, well, let's see if the Les Paul version does something that I'm a fan of. And so, top of the video, I guess it's probably worth me mentioning that I'm not really a massive fan of Les Pauls. That's why I don't really have one. I've got a Yamaha Revstar RS620 that I use for that kind of Les Paul job. So if there was something that I could find at around £500 price range, you know, talking Revstar, this, maybe some Epiphone kind of stuff. It's not going to be a guitar that I'm going to use all the time, whatever I end up with. But it's just good to have a Les Paul around, I guess. So I bought this and it's arrived this morning. And I'll go through some of the things that I really like. This satin finished neck, I really like. That's one of the things that I kind of hate about the Revstar. It's got a polished neck. And if I was sure that I was going to keep that guitar for longer, I would probably want that kind of dulled back to a matte finish. It's got locking tuners, which may or may not be necessary, to be honest, but they seem to do the job. Aside from that, I think it basically aesthetically looks like a Les Paul. Oh, also this neck join is much more friendly than a Les Paul. So you can get right up to that 22nd fret without really too much trouble. Which I guess is a good thing. As I say, aside from that, it is more or less kind of feels like a Les Paul, around that kind of weight, but certainly not a heavy Les Paul, so probably about the same as the Super Strat weighs actually, so maybe about 3.8 kilos. I'll go and weigh it later on. In terms of finish, this is a little bit messier than the S7. I don't know whether it's harder to do guitars with binding and stuff, but so there's like on the nut here it's a bit scrappy, and off of the edge of the binding, the rosewood onto the binding, you can see bits and pieces. So the paint finish is essentially a little bit scrappy. It's the long and short of what I'm saying. Now obviously this is a £500 guitar, so whether or not you'd expect things to be kind of perfect or not at that price range, I'm not sure. If I love the guitar, it wouldn't really bother me. So in terms of setup, I think it plays really good, and the intonation and all that sort of stuff is spot on. It doesn't seem to fret out anywhere, so that's great, a good sign. think it plays really well, and as I say, the neck feels super comfortable, as you'd expect. I do think it plays like a guitar more expensive than it is. I think finish wise, I think it probably looks about as you'd expect maybe. I've certainly seen guitars look worse in this price range. I think there's also guitars that probably kind of ended up coming off of the production line better as well. I guess if you're going for a Les Paul, there's a good chance you might be playing some kind of rockier stuff, so I'll just try and play some of that. So overall, for me, this is a good guitar. I don't think it quite gets to the great status that I would give that S7 guitar, but perhaps that's partly my bias against the Les Paul as an instrument in any case. Would I recommend this to someone, you know, at the beginning of their kind of guitar stage, or even up to the midway? Even if you're a semi kind of pro, or a pro that needs a Les Paul for gigging but doesn't necessarily want to go out and grab a Gibson, absolutely I think this would be a solid, I think, choice. If you can get your hands on one and play one, you may love one. I'm not sure. Certainly doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it as an instrument, and I'm not having any trouble kind of actually making sounds on it, so that's kind of a good sign. As I say, one of the most important things about an instrument, I think, is the neck, and this satin neck feels, I think, pretty incredible, similar to the S7, so that's a real win. Another real win is that it's not too heavy, which is one of those things that a Les Paul certainly can be. The pickups don't seem to be too dark, which also can be an issue with some Les Paul style guitars. So all in all, I think that's a pretty solid instrument. Will I keep it? I'm not so sure, purely because I don't love it. If I did love it, or if I didn't have other Les Paul style guitars that would do this thing, maybe I would. Maybe I'll change my mind over the next couple of days. We'll see. Pretty solid effort, I'd say. Not quite as good for me as the S7 or the bass that I've got from Sire, but pretty solid all round. The only kind of areas where it loses a few points, I think, is that kind of attention to detail, finish. If you're expected a completely perfectly finished guitar, then this isn't quite that. Generally a decent effort, I think. I'm probably fairly similar to you in that I like to try out kind of guitars and look for bargains, and try and see if there's things that are being made elsewhere in the world that are outside of the norm, that are perhaps, you know, really good instruments despite the price. I think this is a really good instrument. I'm not sure this one for me is a great instrument, but on the channel there's plenty of other these kind of reviews and things that I like to play. If you haven't subscribed yet, perhaps you'd like to do so. There's loads of this sort of stuff on the channel, but I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers.